Truth Talks. Please, I'm excited about the Truth Talks. They are addressing true fellowship and what it means, what true fellowship and corporate worship looks like according to the Bible.
All right. How many people read ahead? Oh, yeah. So if y'all read ahead, y'all know where we at. Where we at? Where do we leave off at? 1537, right? 1637. Look at that. You know what? And it's crazy because I got 19. And where were we going to? Oh, 16, right? Look at that. See, I told y'all read ahead. All right. So 1637. We talked about the ark of the covenant. Now David is now, well, let's backtrack. Let's go back a little bit. Let's not go too far ahead. So we know that David has set things up. For those that have read ahead or was here for the book of Samuel, we also know that David is now starting to kind of shift from battlefield David to more of the administrative politician king that he is over Jerusalem. We know that David has assigned things. He put people in order for where does it start? Where for to get the kingdom guarded, have all his warriors in place. So now David is he set up the kingdom, and now he's like, look, we have to bring the ark back. So we brought the ark back. The ark is in the city. So now David is ministering before the ark. He's done that, and it says, everybody up to speed, or do I need to go back even more? All right. So there he left before the ark of the covenant, because we're done, right? This, Lord Asaph and his brothers to minister before the ark continuously, as everyday work required. So David has not forgot what Moses started in the wilderness, but he's getting ready to expand it. God's kingdom is expanding. This is what this is about, the expansion into the promised land. Now, when I say God's kingdom, God's land is expanded, we know that we're not talking about the expansion of the world. There's not new lands popping up. This means Israel is spreading out and the nations around it are starting to take notice. Now, when Saul was king over Israel, what was the difference about Israel? Say again? It was a young nation with a king, and first time Israel had a king. Now, the craziest thing, I dunked through some things, and if you got time and you want to go on the internet and find these things, just Google the only known hieroglyphic where it mentions Israel being the nation with no king. So these times, as they go into this kingship, all these other nations had rulers, extensive years and years and years and years of rulers. Because if you go back, and I mean, a lot of this is cross, as some of my studies cross, who did Abraham come out and meet? It was a king, right? There was other kings. So we know that kingship has been established by men's order on earth. But this kingship is being established by God. And we see that the first one had its flaws. Now, the reason why I bring up the first kingship, because I want you, I told y'all before we talked about Saul, right? Getting ready to see some of the things that David, as his life become more turmoil, we'll see the difference between Saul's decision and David's decision. So let's think about it. All right, so David, being a great man he is, he said he left. He put somebody there to make sure it was continuous. There's a long list of names. This long list of names, they were there to offer the burnt offerings. A lot of them was the sons and so forth. I skipped a lot because it's a lot of more names, more offerings, and the jobs that they were doing inside of the temple. I want to belabor you with all of them, but I will go to 43. And in 43, it says, all the people departed, every man to his house, and David returned to bless his own home. So David has now taken care of all the people. He's given them the bread and the wine. He's brought the Ark of the Covenant back. He's establishing the tent. David has blessed the people with the things that they needed. Now David has to go and do something for his own home. You see the significance there? Before he was even to bless his own house, he blessed everybody else and then went home. Again, we see these things as foreshadowing. Coming to take care of the people first and then going to prepare his house of blessings. just continue. All right, so 17. This is where David starts to have that compassion towards the Ark of the Covenant that's been carried around with Israel from battle to battle, tent to tent, everywhere they went, except for that time where the Ark of the Covenant went to a whole nother nation. We all remember what happened with that, right? Anybody remember when the Ark of the Covenant went into the nation of the Philistines? There was a lot of dying. They wanted to get rid of it. They said, this is bad. Even the things that the Philistines did to try and cover it up, making the molded images, it was all an abomination, but it was also the plague that was being brought on them by having the Ark of the Covenant. So we know that this Ark represents God, and it's not to be taken lightly. So David says so. Now it came to pass, as David sat in his house. Now he's in his house to be blessed. And David said to Nathan, now Nathan the prophet, we don't have much on Nathan the prophet because from the historical records of it, during Solomon's times, all the books that was recorded by Nathan the prophet was burned. So a lot of information was lost. But there are some non-canonical stuff that we might get a chance to get to about the other prophet that's going to speak to him as Gad. Now, we do remember who Nathan was, right? And remember what he said. He's a court prophet, meaning he advises the king, but he gets his advice from God to give to the king. So we know that this interaction right here with Nathan is a good interaction. We know Nathan is coming to him because, or David is telling him something that he wants to do that's in his heart. And then after that, Nathan's going to leave and he's going to get a message from God. Now, this is the corresponding how it goes. Nathan, it came to pass, David sat in his house, that David said to Nathan, the prophet, lo, I dwell in a house of cedar, but the ark of the covenant of the Lord remaineth under a curtain, meaning it was in a tent. And Nathan said unto David, do all that is in thy heart, for God is with thee. Now, is that okay to go and build a house? It's not a permission slip, but we do see that David's heart is aligned, and he has given his prayer, his thought, his feelings to Nathan the prophet. And Nathan is like, hey, you're the king. Go and do all that is in your heart, because we have seen everything that's been done here in Israel, and God is with you. I wanted to clarify that sentence. It wasn't so much saying Nathan saying, hey, good job, David, go with you. These conversations would have been more in depth, but as they translate, they take a little bit of the feeling out of it. Not saying that the words don't have feeling, but a little bit more conversation. Do y'all think it was just that short that Nathan and David had? It probably had a little bit more depth to it. Because we're not just talking about anything. David, a king, has said something that will shake the core of the foundations around him. Not just Israel, but the entire community around Israel. Because David is doing something that is getting ready to, it's similar to what everybody else had in all their realms, but it's different because it's God's kingdom. Now, Jerusalem during these times, and during Solomon times, and we're going to get to Solomon, but I'm telling you a little bit because David laid the foundation for what Solomon built. Jerusalem was the most beautiful golden city. Like everything was layered in gold, everything that was all inside the temple. So do you see what David is doing compared to what we heard about in Samuel when they went to the other temples? Other gods, other false gods and false temples that were erected. Now we have a true temple where people can come worship the one true living God. David is setting a beacon in the area around him for all the nations around him. Almost a call to get yourselves in order. Because after this, David kind of goes back into what David does best. He starts to kick a little butt. All right, or his men do. Now it came to pass. All right, and it came to pass. So Nathan gets a prophecy, and it came to pass that same night that the word of God came to Nathan, saying, go and tell David my servant, thus said the Lord, thou shalt not build me a house to dwell. Thou shalt not build me a house to dwell in it. Right? That's not a go build my house, David, right? This is God through the prophet Nathan kind of putting a halt right to David's feelings, right to what David's plan was to build a house. He said, no, you won't build me a house. For I have not dwelled in a house since the days that I brought Israel up Israel unto this day, but have gone from tent to tent and from one tabernacle to another. Whosoever I have walked with in all of Israel, I spoke a word to, or whoever, I'm sorry. wheresoever I have walked with all of Israel, spoke a word to any of the judges of Israel, whom I commanded to feed my people, saying, why have you not built a house for me? And this whole time, this question has never came up out of all of the places that Israel was and all the nations and everywhere they moved around. Not one time did they want to supplant their temple. This is the first time that it was asked. And David's heart was to give God a home. But God is saying, like, no, y'all never asked for this before. And it's something that moved in this conversation that he's given this prophecy to Nathan. And it says, now therefore, thus shall say unto my servant David, thus saith the Lord of hosts, I took thee from a sheepcote, even from the following of sheep, and that thou should be the ruler over my people. All right. So let's break that down. When God is saying what he done for David, he's replying that through all of the people that came through Israel, I didn't just leave you as someone in the flock, meaning I didn't leave you as the sheep. I didn't just take you from the flock to make you just one over many. He said, I took you from that flock and made you the king of this nation. And God is basically saying, I set you here at the head. Sounds very familiar, right? Sometimes people can't get that concept because it's hard. We don't hear it from the human part. We hear it from the spiritual side when we hear God giving the entire kingdom to Jesus. And this is the lesser David. So we see right here that God is saying, I took you from all those places that you was, and I gave you this kingdom. And so we can understand that promise. And when we hear that Jesus is the eternal king, we see how that line goes. I took you from there and made you the king you are. So you can understand it when I come back that I am king, because you've seen this kinglyship start here from where I made you. And I have been with whosoever has walked, and I have cut all thy enemies from before thee, and I have made thee a name like of the great men that are in the earth. Remember, I told you there were kings before. Now, Saul's name was supposed to be great like this, great amongst those that call themselves king. Now, why did I say great amongst those that call themselves king? Because they call themselves kings without the proper appointmentship. We only know that one king that we know that was properly appointed as a king and a priest by God. And that was Melchizedek. So all these other kings was basically making themselves kings. They rose up in the nation. They were the strongest one in their tribe, and they took kingship by force. All of that is just a remnant of Cain going out into the land and becoming more and more. Remember, Cain was the first ones whose cities grew. So these kings are not set up and established by the one true God. These kings are established by themselves. But God here is reminding David, I made you great. Let's never forget that. I make you what I want to make you. I could have made you a sheep. I could have made you one who was watching over the fold. So in this line, we see that the true authority of that kingship and how it goes. It's not a handing down of the scepter. It's the telling of who's in charge here. And we all know that the giver of authority will always be the authority. Make sense? All right. I also ordained a place for my people. So not just did I make you king, I put them there. I picked them. I called them by name and planted them, and they shall dwell in their place. And they shall be moved no more. Neither shall the children of wickedness waste them any more as they did in the beginning. And since the time I commanded the judges to be over my people Israel, moreover, I will subdue all thy enemies. And God is going on to tell Nathan, this is right in my eyes for David to start to lay the foundation. I'm going to go down to 14.
So this is the conversation that God is having with Nathan. Nathan had yet to have the conversation.
He has not had it with David. Remember, David asked. Nathan went away. God came to Nathan with a prophecy, and he's telling Nathan this, and he has to go back and reply and tell the king this. And it says, I'm gonna go to 12. And he should. Oh, nope, I don't want to skip nothing because this is. I forgot where I was at here. All right. Also, ordain a place for my people. And since the time I commanded the judges to be over Israel, moreover, I will subdue all the enemies. Furthermore, I will tell thee that the Lord will build thee an house. And it shall come to pass when the days expired that thou must go to be with thy fathers. Now listen what he's saying. He's saying the time is going to come, David. And one day you're not going to be here. So we know that this kingdom that Nathan is getting the prophecy about, it's not quite what David is really thinking. But when we see David's reaction to when it comes back, we'll see how David takes all this information in. Aspire and you should go be with that I will raise up a seed after thee, which shall be of thy sons, and I will establish his kingdom. Huh? Now you would think that it's Solomon. I was like, yeah, Solomon. Now, with David being the king, we hear this and we like, yes, it's Solomon. But do you hear do you hear what he's telling David? He's saying, and this is what the prophecy that he got. He's saying, and it shall come to pass when the days be expired, meaning David is dead, and that thou must go be with thy father, means David is gone, that I shall raise up a seed after thee, meaning it didn't mean that one, it just mean he was going to raise up a seed, which shall be of thy son, meaning or multiple sons. Now David himself in all of this is going to admit, I got many sons, but he got many sons. He had many, but particular in the Chronicles. And the reason why we start here is because if you don't get into the later books, you'll miss certain things and you'll read Samuel like, man, why is this a conflict? Because David heard this prophecy and he said it must be Solomon. But it wasn't because that David heard and he made it Solomon. It was because David didn't even know that he was continuing on the things of prophecy. Go ahead.
David didn't know he was Jesus was a descendant of him.
Because remember, even though David knew God, he did not know. It's like John the Baptist didn't know that Jesus was sitting in front of across the table from him on nights when he would go up to Mary's house and eat dinner. Remember, they were only 6 months apart. He didn't know. So there are things that are being hidden to David. And that's why lines in the New Testament, before this person, I am, because they did not know. But they rejoiced in his day of coming. Make sense? They knew part. So this is to say, David, now I don't want anyone to think like, well, David said he walked with God. He did. David walked with God. It said it. A man after God's own heart. David saw the things that you and I can't see because they were revealed to him. We'll get some of that proof later. All right, so let's move on. So David here's this is the prophecy. These are prophecy fulfilled in the New Testament. All right. He shall build me a house, and I will establish his throne forever. All right, so when David hears this, let's say tomorrow, breakfast time or in the morning in royal court, I want you to understand that David's simple request here has become grand. And when David hears this, the excitement of David is like, hey, I know who it is. It's this person, so forth and so on. All right, and he shall build me a house, and I will establish his throne forever, and I will be his father, and he shall be my son. And I will not take my mercy away from him as I took it from him that was before thee. Wait. It's like Solomon. No, it's got to be talking about Solomon. But who did he take it before? Did he take it away from David? Did he take it away from Saul? Because Israel only got 2 kings. At this point, there's only 2 people. So Jesus is establishing his line right now. Right now. He's telling everybody that if they were reading the book of Samuel and combine this, he's telling everybody, I'm coming. Like he's been telling everybody I'm coming since forever. But he's not saying I'm just coming. I'm coming and I will sit on the throne. All right. I will be his father, and he shall be my son. And I will not take my mercy away from him as I took it away from them before thee. But I will settle him in my house and in my kingdom forever, and his throne shall be established evermore. according to all the words and according to all the visions. So Nathan spoke to David. So David is happy now. It ended right there. David has now, at the end of that, David knows. David knows. So David does what David would do. He gets a word. And this could be an example of how we carry it, our thoughts, our ideas, the prayers, the understanding, going back. Once we receive, continue to pray, because it says right here in 16, and David the king came before the Lord and said, who am I? So David, after receiving the information, after saying, hey, I want to do this in my heart, he's now saying, who am I? David hasn't changed. He just understands the magnitude of the weight that he just asked God for. And a lot of understanding, David was always had something in his heart to work for, but when he asked for it, God gave it to him more than he expected. He just wanted to build something nice because his house was nice. I got a nice house, and therefore God should have a nice house. It's like, God, well, I don't want you to just build me a house. I've been with these guys all the time. I'm going to tell you what I'm doing. You see, it wasn't a mystery to God what he was telling David. He was just letting David in on the secret. I was going to then build a house. It's kings that were born years ago that are coming and bring stuff to you for whatever reason, because Israel's growing. Think about it. Why did these people just say, oh, you know what, David, you're such a great guy. You're beating everybody up. We want to establish all these laws and covenants between us. We want to be the people. No, God had put those people in place many years before, and all of their thoughts of royalty and all their collection just for them to bring it to that purpose. This temple was always meant to be built, just like it was always meant to be destroyed.
They built by Solomon.
Yeah, as seeing other nations, of course, David did, and they knew about the gods in the other nations, how they had temples for their gods. Do you think that they may have had an influence of what David wanted to do for the one and true God, build a temple just like the other nations had for their God? Or do you think he might even went back, or he just wanted to do a nice thing?
I think what the best way to put it is this. I always say I wasn't there, but if I was there, I would say that as we read the scriptures and the direction that they go, we see that David himself had a couple of eras, meaning around him, things were happening with other kings that may have influenced how David thought. And I can't say particularly with this, but we do know that later on the adversary moved against him to number his people. But the reason why the adversary moved to number his people because of the wars and the conflicts was going on. And David said, I, not God, I need to have my army ready. Now I know we're getting a little ahead, but hopefully that kind of answers that question.
Yeah, what made it influence him? Maybe he looked at his palace, or did he look at his palace and say, hey, the other nations have a building for their God. Maybe we should have one for our God.
Well, see, what David had when he built his house is made of cedar, which was very valuable back then. Okay, and so he looks out, see this tent out here that houses the ark, and he's saying, I have a house better than he does, but he's my God. So I feel that he said, okay, so I cannot be in a greater house than my God should be sitting in a greater house than what I am. Okay, and yes, he might have been influenced by the pagan around him. But the thing is that his palace, his house, shouldn't be greater than what he wanted to honor God with. That's the way I look at it.
And even if the influence was there, it's still the greater purpose. Meaning, even if David did look out and say, look at all those other temples and other places. When he looked and saw the God of all creation, the God of everything, he said, why is this the standard for his house? And that's what kind of made the question. And, when God said, I never thought about that. Like, I've been walking with the judges, nobody's ever thought of that because it just wasn't a thought, I guess. You know, and it was okay for them to build up, break down, put a tent, because the ark was always in their midst.
But
Go ahead.
God required them to build his tabernacle, the tent.
Mhm.
He gave instructions to do that. And that was to me, it was been their thought the whole time, is that we did what he wanted us to do as people. But when David was looking at after, since he was man after God's own heart, he could have been looking at, just like I said, I cannot be dwelling in anything greater than what my God is rebelling in.
And I think that's the bigger point. The understanding that David never, if David had gold, and we see that later, if David had gold, he believed that it was all God's for the greater good of the people and the building of the glory of the kingdom. Now, whether it was everybody else, and let's say even it was influence. If it was influenced by having everybody else. Well, if that's the case, let's say that David took it from the Holy Spirit level or the Holy Spirit understanding. He said, well, look, if these bums and they got their fake gods around here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to build the biggest, shiniest temple on the top of the hill to let them know that my God is 1,000 times better. And that's what Jerusalem was. A beautiful city of gold to a point where it shined in all the city. In fact, Jerusalem's a building that Solomon actually brought into the world was actually exactly what they talk about in Revelations. That city. And that was, and when I say what they talk about, it's just a glimmer. I can only imagine. Well, yeah, I don't, let's not get into this brain of mine. It's kind of slowing down today. All right, so David is asking questions. David the king came and sat before the Lord. A minute. 16. Did anybody else say anything different than David came and sat before the Lord?
Yeah, King David.
King David sat in front.
Went in and sat before the Lord, and he said.
Okay, so David has a relationship similar to like Moses had. He could go sit with the Lord and talk to him. Now, this is also something that has been given to us, the ability to go and sit with the Lord and speak with him. Sometimes it's the little sentences that'll slide by you because you're reading them so quick. David sat with the Lord. Now, if you question that, I'm like, no, it was metaphorical. Wait a little bit further, and I will show you that what David was doing wasn't metaphorical at all. The same way what we do isn't metaphorical at all. All right. All right. David sat with the Lord and said, who am I, O Lord God? What is my house that thou hast brought me here to? And yet, this was a small thing in thy eyes, O God, for thou hast also spoken of thy servant's house for a great while to come, and has regarded me according to the estate of man of his high degree, meaning you have put me in knowledge and power above man. O Lord God, what can David speak more to thee than the honor of thy servant? For thou knowest thy servant. O Lord, for thy servant's sake, and this is a prayer, but I'm reading it because I want you to hear it as if it's just that question. He's sitting down and having this conversation. O Lord, for thy servant's sakes, according to thy own heart, hast thou done all things great, and make known all of these great things. O Lord, there is none like thee. Neither is there any God besides thee. So now we know that David ain't even considering other temples, because in his prayers, he's not saying as these other gods, that's why I'm building a temple. You see what I'm saying? He's saying there is no other gods besides you, so you should have a temple on this earth. Where is it? Oh Lord, there's none like thee, neither are there any gods besides thee, according to all that we have heard with our ears. David's sitting in front of God with all the knowledge that he's heard from all the people. Because the knowledge that he's heard from the past built up his faith so he can sit there now. All of the things he has heard has brought him to that point. All of the things as believers, when we hear those conversations and we're having belief, brings us to a point where we could be like David. And what nation on earth is like the people of Israel, whom God went to redeem to be his own people? We know the redemption story. To make these names of greatness and terribleness. In other words, when we hear Jesus say some will rise up to everlasting life and condemnation, here it is. Greatness and terribleness. Israel was a representation. If you accepted Israel, we'll see this, you've seen greatness. If you went against Israel, you've seen the terribleness. By driving out nations from before thee, whom thou hast redeemed out of Egypt. But the people of Israel did not make it on their own people forever, and thou, the Lord, has became their God. Therefore, Lord, let this thing that thou hast spoken concerning thy servant and concerning a house to be established forever, and doest what thou said. Let it even be established that thy name may be magnified forever, saying, the Lord of hosts is the God of Israel, even God of Israel, and let the house of David servant be established before thee. For thou, our God, hast told thy servant that thou wilt build him a house. Therefore thy servant hath found in his heart to pray before thee. You see what happened? David had a thought. He seen something, he was compassionate, he was moved. David meditated on his thought. When Nathan, he told Nathan his thought, which means him and Nathan had some communication, and David said, these are my thoughts. This is my feelings towards this. Go and do what the prophets do. Talk to God. Hey, and he got a prophecy, right? The prophecy came back, told David all these great things, and then David said, because you've done all these things and told me, I had to come back to you and pray. You see the cycle? We talk. We live, we listen, we learn, we sit with God. And then when he comes with those things in our life, go back. Go back and pray. Go back. Do what David did. David could have took the good news, went out and said, hey, this is for me. I'm ready to go. God has told me anything. But before he did anything, he went back and talked to God. And now the Lord, the Lord God, has promised all the goodness to his servant. Now, therefore, let it please thee to bless the house of thy servant, that it may be before thee forever. And thou blessed, O Lord, and it shall be blessed forever. All right. So David now has another thing kind of cooking on the stove. He has another assignment. One that he asked for. David asked for this. He asked, when people say, hey, be careful what you ask God for, he'll give it to you. David asked for I wonder what house that David had in mind. Remember, David's house is in cedar, it's fine, nice wood. I wonder did David say, you know what? That'd be great. But I want, again, that's why I say read ahead. Anybody read ahead? All right. If you read ahead, you know that David probably did have that in mind. Just let me build a nice house. But when we get into the things, you'll see David let out a little secret. He says, yeah, and this is how God told me to build it. So again, a house that David asked for is going to be established forever. That he's not the architect of the house. He's just a servant building that house. You get where I'm going with it?
He's not the architect.
He's not the architect.
But he's given a plan.
He's been given the plans and the permission. David had a request in his heart. God sent someone to help him with that request and understand it. And say, hey, here's all the full details. David went back to God and said, thank you, God. Thank you for telling me all that. But in that process, again, remember, it's space. Somewhere in there, as David was sitting before the Lord, God said, well, now, David, since you asked, I don't want your house because your house isn't good enough. Like people wouldn't expect David to hear that, for God to say, your house isn't good enough. But if you think about it, if David's idea was a house, and the idea that God gave David was a greater house, we see that David's idea probably wasn't as big or as grand as what God had in plan. Because this was supposed to be the beacon of light for everybody to come to. It's kind of getting back to what it was supposed to be. This was supposed to be the fix. But we have the whole book and we know that it wasn't. Can you imagine right now if Nebuchadnezzar never had to go to Jerusalem? Jerusalem lived faithful. the city, the people, they thrived and they flourished. They all kept the commands. They walked in a way that God was. Now, this is a very hypothetical because we know it didn't happen. But I want you to just stay with me for a while. I want you to understand that this could have been the end. We could have read this, the end. Everybody would have just been walking around Jerusalem, or as we at the extensions of Jerusalem right now, having a good old time. You know, hey, how's it going? Shalom. Hey, oh, shalom. It would have been just shaloming all day. Peace would have been everywhere. But it didn't happen. This beacon of light is going to go away. But we get to see the work that David is getting ready to put into it. We're getting ready to see some of the things that David is doing and how he's going to work. But David got some more butts to kick before he can get busy. So let's get into 18. Now it came to pass that David whooped on the Philistines and subdued them all the way down to Gath. Why is Gath important? Who's from Gath? All right, we had somebody from Gath, and all right, and David whooped on that champion. Now he said, you know what? I'm just gonna beat all y'all all the way down to Gath. Now Gath was one of the cities that also took in the Goliath. Now I was reading and some commentary came up and it said, man, I said, well, that's crazy because the guy said something very interesting. Anybody ever wonder why David picked up 5 stones? He knew he wasn't gonna miss. Anybody wonder why David picked up 5 stones? Because Goliath had 4 other brothers. He picked up a stone for each one of them. Because if they was all out there, they was all gonna get a. So I always wondered that, and somebody said, yeah, they picked up. And if you read in Chronicles, he had 4 brothers. But David's stones that he picked up turned into people. It just, my mind works a certain type of way, put scriptures together. And when God said, I can make these rocks cry out, well, I guess David turned them rocks into warriors. Because those warriors are kicking some butt here. They're getting in battles by themselves. His king of armies, his host of armies is leading, and they're just whooping everything all around. So David beat up the Philistines, and then he went up to the Moabites. Now this is family, and he brought and he smote the Moabites, and the Moabites became servants. Now some scripture, some texts may say slave. Now we do know that Deuteronomy law says what about people becoming servants? It's only for a short period of time. So even in the beating of these other armies and the people that were bringing the gifts and becoming nations, it was never to hamper them or to be on them the whole time. It was to bring them under so they would learn the ways of God and act accordingly. If they didn't act accordingly, they were out of there. All right. And David beat the Moabites, and they brought gifts, and David smote had, where we at, Debbie? Oh, she quiet tonight. Hadadezer, king of Zobah, and unto Hamath. And he went and established the dominion of the river of the Euphrates. And David took himself 1,000 chariots, 7,000 horsemen. He's building his army. And when the Syrians of Damascus, came to help Hadadezer, king of Joab, David slew the Syrians 22,000. He's still out here kicking butt. And he put a garrison smack dab in the middle of Syria and Damascus, and they watched it. And the servants brought him gifts, and then the Lord prepared. Now, if you notice, every time he wins, he's getting gifts. It's not happenstance that David just a chapter ago was tasked to building a temple. Well, David asked to build a temple. Now he's building a temple. So these gifts that are coming in, they're not like, here's a birthday gift, David, here's one thing. These gifts are truckloads, gold, silver, all the things that they're bringing into town because they will be spoils of war. So even David's fighting isn't by happenstance. Everything is happening according to the will of God. So David just kicking butt. Likewise, if you read it, he just beating them down. Let's see. Yeah. All right. So let's go ahead. Let's go to 10. And he sent Hadoram, his son, to King David. So after he got beat, everybody said some of the kings sent their sons to King David to inquire his welfare and to congratulate him because he had fought against Hadadezer and smitten him. And Hadadezer had war with Tohu. All right, that's another word. and with him all manners of vessel and gold and silver and brass. And also King David dedicated it unto the Lord. So I said everything he was getting, he was putting it. Gold, silver, everything he brought in from the nations, from Edom, from Moab. Now, all of these people are family, right? Everybody, even the Philistines are somewhere in that line over there on that chart. So these were people that should have been in through family relationships, yet war and growth of the community has started to spread them apart to where they're fighting each other. All right. Also, David dedicated unto the Lord silver, gold, brought things from Moab, the children of Ammon, the Philistines, and moreover, Abishai, the son of Zerahu, slew the Edomites in the valley, 8,000. I mean, his team is getting it. And David reigned, not 13. David put Edom and all the Edomites because it became David's servants. Thus the Lord preserved David wherever he went. David reigned over all of Israel and executed judgment and justice among all these people. David is ruling the people, and he's ruling them wisely. The ones that he's ruling them with a rod and a staff. He's out there thumping heads and getting things going. All right. So now David is established. He's running through wars, and somebody said, "Hey, David was cool with Ammon. It was Ammon, right? Make sure I get these names right. All right. So Nahash, the children of Ammon. When I say Ammon, I'm talking about the whole nation. Remember, they looked out for David during the time when he was running. And David said, well, you know what? I'm up here kicking butt, getting gold. I'm going to go show some niceties to this guys. I'm going to send my folks in there just to say hello, see if they all right. You know, they dad died. Like, you know, it was a common thing for kings to do. So the guys come up and they're like, hey, Nahash, you know, my son, right? Yeah. And they like, yeah. So he welcomed them in, right? And as they come in, they all sit down at the dinner table. They're going to eat their food. And they hear the barber clippers go off. And then like the barber come over and he starts shaving their beards off. And he give them a baldy. Yeah, get this baldy. And then the crazy part, he take their clothes and he's like, embarrassment. And he cut it up the middle. So their manhood showing. Now you got to realize, first of all, there are laws in the Hebrew culture that talk about nakedness, exposing one's self. And it goes on to talk about the nakedness. Really, that's a detail of exposing the nakedness of one's sins. So to be exposed is basically saying, like, you see all my sin. So these people are bald and half beard, and they stumbling back. And they were like, wait a minute, what happened to you guys? I said, man, we went up there to do what you told me, and they cut my wang out and shaved my beard. They had a barber in there. They brought him from the future, like it was a future barber. He came in, had the little chair and everything. He did that. When it was, okay, all right. So the barber shaved all like, yeah, and David like, what? He shaved you? Like, yeah, man. He shaved us, bro. And look at me. And David like, put that away. He said, just stay here in Jericho. He like trying to, that's your bald head. You ain't got no beard. He said, stay here in Jericho until all your stuff grow back. Now, why is that important? Why didn't David say, hey, man, just come back home to your family. Nobody's going to judge y'all for what happened to y'all. Y'all went out and did something for me. Why would David tell them to stay in Jericho? Because a righteous king will never let the people be embarrassed.
But also again, they were unclean, but they came back because of it.
Jericho was a city that you still had to enter in through cleanliness. He told them to rest in Jericho because going back amongst the people, they would have been a stain. Everybody would have said, look what they wouldn't have said. Now, in the Navy, right? It's this thing. Once you all the pay grades, and it's probably the same around the Marine Corps. I think it probably starts a little sooner for y'all. But in the Navy, if a chief, petty officer, which is the E7, if he get in trouble, they never say that person by name. You know what they say? Chief. And I'm standing there like, people come to me, yeah, man, you robbed the bank. And I'm like, I never did anything. You know what I mean? Can you imagine these people coming back? You have to think that David is also protecting their shame, but he's also protecting reputation. There it is. Reputation of his people. These are his people. Why would he want to embarrass them? Why would he want to bring that shame? Now we get the story later, but the story is for God's glory because now we see what happened next. So after this, they decide, well, look, he did. He offered it to him.
You know, because he was good friends with him.
He was good friends with the dad.
But the son would listen to
He was listening.
it on the side.
He was listening to unwise people. Now, that's a whole lesson in itself. When you see somebody out there duffing everybody up and they doing it in a good way, they ain't causing no problem, they bring you an olive branch, don't go shave their head off and cut their clothes. That's bad business. Because somebody bigger might be coming. So David, after he heard that, he said, man, I'm ready to go out here and get it sparking. And they was like, all right, David, this is what you do. They got whooped on for doing that. All right. So after they cut him up, let me get right here. Let's go to 19:8. And when David heard of all this, he sent Joab. Now we know Joab like killing folk. We know Joab gets busy with the sword every chance he got. When David heard that, he said, go and grab Joab. He said, oh, Joab? Yeah, because he's a sharp wrecker. He can count and kill. Yeah, he was busy. So he got him, and he was like, yo. So Joab is David's second. He's a master battler. So Amon like, look, we did this to them. We need to go get some backup because this is getting ready to get ugly. So he go grab a nation. He's like, yo, y'all want to go in this on me? And they're like, yeah. So now you got two nations that's standing against Israel because they teamed up. But what they didn't know is that the Holy Spirit was moving in these men of battle. When it came down to the war, Joab, and I forgot who was the other one with him. Anybody read ahead? It was Joab and somebody else. Abishai, two killers in their army, right? So they out there. And Joab's like, yo, man, we got these two armies coming against us. And he's like, yeah. He said, listen, if they whooping on you too bad, scream, and I'm going to come help. And if they whooping on me too bad, I'm going to scream, and you come help. So they was already preparing strategies. Now, I studied looking into wars and how they were fought back in those days. It was very unorganized, all right? A lot of things was just throw numbers at each other. And I tell you this because this is one of the things that could have made David number the people because battles were just throwing numbers. I found out when I was finding out about the art of war, Napoleon, how he used to conduct battle. They said Napoleon killed about 3 million people just because of the way he fought. He would send men to the front line, they would get shot, then he would send another one, and another one, and another one, and another one, until his forces were so overwhelming that he would eventually win the war. And then we all know Napoleon lost. However, these are how these kings fought. They fought in numbers. And if you see it a lot in the scriptures, you start to see people start to talk about numbers. And as the scriptures went on, the numbers started to matter. Because numbers did matter in combat and conflict. Remember what did Jesus tell? Jesus. I keep saying what did Jesus? What did God? Well, Jesus tell Moses. You need to number the people that's a certain age, right? And those people were for fighting. All right. So when we see this, know that wars were happening, and it was a great loss. But we see right here, these two men said, we don't want to lose people because we don't have the numbers. So let's use our numbers together to win this war. And they won. All right. So the children of Ammon saw the children of Syria were fled because Syria was over there causing smoke. That's who they fighting. In 1913, it says, be of good courage, and let us behave ourselves valiantly for our people and for the cities of God. And let the Lord do that which is good in his sight. Okay? So even when they were going out to fight and they knew they didn't have the numbers, they still said, whatever is good in the Lord's sight, how it be. Because he sent us out here to do this job. All right? So Joab and the people were with him drew nigh before Syria until the battle, and they fled before him. Syria was out of there. They got whooped back in a couple chapters before, so I don't know. I think there's different. And when the children of Ammon saw the Syrians were fleeing, them motor scooters bailed on me, and they likewise fled. And Abishai fled before me into the city, and then Joab came to Jerusalem. And when the Syrians saw that they were put worse than before, they sent a message and drew forth the Syrians that were beyond the river. So they pulled their people back, and the captain of the host, Hadazer, went before them. And it was told David had gathered Israel to pass over the Jordan and came up the south, the battle array. So David was ready. So when David had put the battle array against Syria and they fought, they lost. But the Syrians fled before Israel again. David slew the Syrians, 7,000 men, which fought in chariots, and 40,000 footmen, and he killed their captain. And then the servant of Hadazer went, saw it was worse, and he said, look, I just want to make peace. I've seen you walking the dogs on everybody else, and I just want peace. All right. 20. See how much is in here. Maybe a little bit more. Oh, yeah, we'll hit this right here, and then we'll stop at 4, and we'll pick back up. Another war with the Philistines. Actually, I think I can get through this. Think you can get through it? All right. All right. So, and it came to pass that after the years was expired, in the time of kings to go out to battle. Y'all remember that? It was a time the kings didn't go out to battle. Let's go back to Samuel's. When David stopped going out to battle, what happened? Anybody remember? He got in trouble. David, now this right here is all you're gonna get about that.
He got in trouble.
It's all you're gonna get about it. And this is why I say, and this is just more so, when we read the Chronicles versus Samuel, put the whole story together and say, this is all happened to David. Because the Chronicles, they just said David stopped going out to battle, and the next thing you know, it's like he fights some wars, he do some good things, he stands up, and then, oops, there's Solomon. Things happened before that. That same prophet that went and told him about, hold on, make sure I'm getting my prophets right. Which one came to him and told him we'll get to it. I got it here. Don't worry about it. I got it. The wheels are turning. All right. And David came to pass that the years expired, the time of kings to go out to battle. Joab led forth the powers of the army and wasted the country of the children of Ammon and besieged Rabbah, but David tarried at Jerusalem. He stayed home. And Joab smote Rabbah and destroyed it. And after that, they told David, hey, we can't take the city. If we take the city, they'll say it was us. We need you to come up here. In the last scripture, they said that, and then this is what happened. And David took the crown of their king off his head and found it to weigh a talent of gold. And there was precious stones in it, and it was set upon David's head. And he brought also exceeding much spoils out of the city. So David has a crown. David has not only been given a kingdom, David has not only been instructed the kingdom, a crown has been put on David's head. David has everything that you need to make up a king. The next couple chapters after this, we're going to see some more wars fighting, but we're also going to see the counting of Israel. We're going to see the temple being built, or some of the start of it. David's going to be talking about his children, who's who in the zoo, who owns what, the casting of lots for rights and duties in the temple, things that we've already talked about throughout here. I'm just going to pull out this last richness. If you can read ahead, it'll make it easier, because if we can read ahead, we can be done with Chronicles, First Chronicles, and we can roll right into where David is old in his bed. Because we only have a couple more chapters left, and a lot of it is just the roles. It's a couple more tales, organization of the priests, gatekeepers, judges and appointments, so forth and so on, until we get to about 28, and that's where he addresses officers and officers of the temple, and it kind of wraps up, because the last thing it talks about in 29 is David's death. I think we can reach it there. I'm going to start pulling back some of the deep details of what I'm saying, because a lot of it is getting ready to ramp up into these next books. Not saying I'm going to shortchange you. We still got another good story, David counting these people, and I thought we would have got to it today, but I would have read the account from David, the account from Samuel, the account from Chronicles, and we would have heard Gad's side of the story on how it was given to him. Are there any questions? Oh, I'm making it easy on me. All right.